Just imagine their little legs trying to move and trying to get away.
But they are as resilient a creature as anything, insects, because it doesn't matter how ultra cold it gets. The first day you get a little bit of warmth, you're going to see little buggies out there flying around. How do they do that?
They're very resilient.
Yeah,
they've learned to adapt and have been able to adapt. And some of that probably goes back to the number of generations, their life cycle gives them the ability to make changes quicker than we can make changes.
Mm-hmm.
You think about aphids and mites that are two that can have multiple populations or life cycles in a given growing season or even calendar year, and so that helps them. They can make little tweaks to their genetics to, for the next generation, whatever it is, whatever that stressor is or whatever that, to adapt to that and keep moving on.
But there are some,
even when we try to kill them, if we're using, various different pesticides, insecticides to use, on those particular insects, some of those insects may survive. They may not be affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that population that then is left,
genetically they'll pass down whatever it is that causes them to have that resistance.
Yeah, that's there, then gets passed along to the next generation. And then when we try to kill them the next go around and they don't die, then we have to start looking at, well, why is that?
Yeah. There are some that are more vulnerable than others, and not just to cold weather extremes, but to diseases and to other creatures and other factors, which causes us to wonder about honeybees and how they're doing now. Of course, they were in crisis mode only a couple of years ago, and I don't know how they've responded since that time. I think it's a little better now, but I only think that because you don't hear as much about them now.
They are more stable now. It seems like, we went through a really bad period there, and a lot of those stressors or those other organisms that are attacking them are still around, but we've either, found ways to try to combat those and better management practices, and all that kind of fits into, if we can figure out what the problem is, then it's a little bit, it helps, when we're trying to resolve it and keep going. So things have been fairly stable here the last, 4 or 5 years or so with that.
Well, Extension actually has a beekeeping course that you can take online.
Yes.
It's on organic honeybee colony management, and particularly they mention managing the varroa mites and other pests, and the way that you can work with that. There are a lot of people here in Indiana County who keep bees.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Almost like the amount of people that raise chickens anymore.
Well, speaking of which, because that was going to be my next area of conversation with you, and the avian influenza that we hear about, and I don't know how expert you are on watching this avian influenza thing that is coming about, but obviously it's affecting the prices of eggs, and that's where people seem to be focused. But the chicken population as a whole, is a scary thing. Yeah, and I heard last night. You can tell me if this is true or not. That before he left, President Biden ordered the reduction in the chicken population in the United States by something like 1 billion chickens. Did you hear anything about that?
So one of the key ways that we have to try and deal with some of these issues that come up, like this avian flu, and particularly in this case, is depopulation. Mm-hmm. So big word for we have to kill the chickens that are infected with it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where that goes back to. So there has to be rules and regulations in place to enable the regulators to go in and say, you have to this hurt. this flock in this case, flock, not a herd, flock in this case has to be killed.
Sort of like doing
so
a
that
clear burn.
Yes. So we're trying to stop. Yeah, and it's like, trying to do forest fires. They actually set fires to burn off a strip so that we can stop the fire from progressing.
When the wildfire comes,
Yes.
it's got no fuel.
Yes, it has no fuel because we kind of pre-burnt that off so that we can kind of try to put a halt to it. So that's what's happening here. So they've got to go in and inspect that. They've got to, determine that, this flock has to be put down so that we can try and slow or stop the spread of this particular disease. So this is not new. This has been going on, at various times with other species of animals. We may forget about it. We may not ever know about it. It may not be at the level that this is. This has gotten, a lot of press, and so it's out there. And you feel it in your pocketbook. You might go to the store and not actually find product or be limited in the product you can buy as a result of this. So it's much more visible than some of the things. If we go back, plum pox was a disease that got into stone fruit.
Really, really devastating.
In Pennsylvania, yes. And I can't remember
about 30 years ago?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yes.
Yeah.
Extremely devastating. But that's how one of the main ways that they were able to slow that down and eventually eradicate it, in that case, was they had to tear out all the trees. They depopulated, right? They had to literally bulldoze orchards out
Started
to
from
stop
scratch
that.
then.
Yes. Yeah. And then they had to start all over again. So it's very dramatic. It has a very direct effect on, if it was your orchard that got took out, or if it's your flock of birds, you might have, 100,000 birds or more. You lose those, very dramatic and big deal. But sometimes that's what, they found over time, that this is one of the ways that we have to use to get a handle on this stuff and stop it from moving on.
Okay, that all being the case, of course, then people are left to wonder, okay, is it safe to eat the eggs? Is it safe to eat the chickens? And where can I get one? Because these days that's not the easiest thing in the world.
And in this case, proper cooking and everything's okay. But there could be diseases where that's not the case, where it literally could affect the quality of the product, or it could affect us if we ate it. So that's very specific to what it is we're talking about.
Yeah.
So those things, So those it's a big deal. And it affects the whole supply chain. And then on top of that, when we see people stealing eggs and hoarding, and you can only eat so many eggs in a day, and they do have a shelf life, although it's usually pretty good. But this is one of those cases where we need to just utilize what you need, and we'll get through this. But we can make it worse by going in and taking more than we need to have.
Sure.
Then somebody else doesn't
Just
get
like
it.
the toilet paper
Yes.
shortage a few years ago.
Oh, we're going to have a cold snap, so we got to go out and clear everything off the shelves and
Get
then
the
it
milk
sits,
and bread.
Yeah, and it sits on our shelf and goes bad. So just staying calm. There are a lot of people working on this, and then the other thing that this did move over into dairy. So that's a whole nother piece of the puzzle that they're going in and checking and testing and seeing how far.
The processing
happen
of cow's milk is so regulated
Yes.
that what you're getting out of your carton is very safe. It's
Yes.
If you drink it right out of the cow like we used to do, then you
up your risk level
right. You're taking more risks
for sure.
All right, so all of those things are things that we watch, and it's interesting to watch how the world reacts, and because eggs, okay, I only need 2 scrambled eggs this week. But the baker down the road, he needs a few dozen just to stay in business.
Yes.
And that affects his prices and that domino effect. It's amazing how one seemingly small thing is not small at all.
No. You think about all the restaurants that focus on breakfast and lunch and all that. So it's
all of those things. All right, so now I'm scared.
Yeah,
Appreciate that very much.
No need to be. Stay calm. Take a deep breath.
Trying my best, but Extension, by the way, does have a very, very nice section on an article with some great ideas for avian influenza.
Yes,
for those who are actually who have chickens.
That's right. Yeah, especially with the number of people that have backyard flocks, and there was even I saw a news clip. There was somebody from Pittsburgh, I think, that has a business where they rent out.
They rent out their chickens?
They rent out chickens and coops, and so their business is booming right now.
Yeah.
But yet everybody that has a small flock needs to be paying attention to the health of that flock for sure. Yeah.
Well, I saw a flock of chickens the other day being chased by a turkey. So that's a whole nother issue.
It sure is.
All right.
Yeah. So there's articles related to that, both from the food safety as well as the production side of the whole puzzle. A lot of people working on that very diligently. And you mentioned about the Beekeeping 101. And that's been extremely popular around the world. And they actually have done a couple webinars, which I think you can actually, if you're interested in beekeeping around the world, that was another whole piece that they did. Where they actually were talking about, beekeeping literally at various places around the world. So that can be a very interesting
different
thing.
Practices.
Yeah, all the different things that go into that. And I believe they're working on another level to the Beekeeping 101 now that will be.
So
it's been in the works and coming out.
Access any of those, just Google Penn State Extension. It'll take you right there.
Sure will.
All right. Very good, sir.
Along
Thank
in
you.
1,000 other topics that are on there that might be of interest to you.
Tons of other good things.
Yes.
All right. Next week, I want to get some calls next weekend. So, boys and girls, that's your assignment. Come up with a question or two for Bob about your lawns, your gardens, your trees, whatever it happens to be, your plants, and we'll ask Bob to answer some of those next week.
And that could even be something, if you think about it before we get to next Friday, and call it in, and we'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah, let us know. It's Indiana in the Morning. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com.
Experience an unforgettable evening with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, led by Maestro Manfred Honeck and featuring violinist Maria Duenas on Monday, February 17th at 7:30. Fisher Auditorium on the IUP campus comes alive with Dvorak's New World Symphony.